welcome to Coryell Roofing Setting the Standard. We've got an amazing episode queued up today. Guests from Southlake, Texas, Stewart Shirey and Ed King from Government Capital, and these guys are super dynamic. We're here to talk today about how financing assists and benefits public entities. So welcome to the show. Welcome to Setting the Standard.
Thank you, Chris.
So Ed, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about your background. You're one of the smartest guys I've ever known, and you present really well. So where did you come from? What made you get into this industry?
Well, out of college, and that was a long time ago, I was in commercial banking. So I was in commercial lending, etc. And then I was recruited by my family business. My dad was in the club car, golf, and utility vehicle distributorship business back from the early 70s. So that was the family business. And back in the late 80s and early 90s, when I was doing the banking thing, the banking industry wasn't real exciting. We had a lot of bank closures. The future was looking a little bit dimmer for a young and upcoming banker back in that time. So I was recruited by one of my older brothers to come into the family business. So I actually was involved in the family business for about 10 years. And, we in that business, we were a large distributor for golf and utility vehicles.
Right.
We did a lot of business with state and local governments.
Okay.
And one happened to be the city of Dallas for their Parks and Rec and the Fair Park projects that we worked on, and I crossed paths with Government Capital, a company called Government Capital, because our traditional banking relationships didn't really have a product or a solution for municipal projects. They're tax exempt, there's unique features to the contracts, the procurement's a little different. So I connected with Government Capital, 27 years ago in the course of doing business. After a while, like a lot of family businesses, I felt like that we had an opportunity to go to another level. I had a younger brother that I had recruited to come on board. I had some old contacts from the banking industry that were saying, come back, we really think this is a good time for you to get back into the, come back into the water. We've got some great opportunities. So I was looking at that, had conversation with Stewart about then. And so about 22 and a half years ago, I came over to Government Capital. So I've got an experience in background of commercial banking. I've got some business management. I was a very young president and general manager of a company, 28 years old. I was running a company, had 60 employees, and we were growing the business. And so a lot of great experience. So I came into the public finance sector with a little different perspective of not just having a finance background or accounting background or just a banking background, but actually a knowledge of how to manage sales processes when you're dealing with schools and universities and state and local government agencies.
Because it's complicated.
That's it. It's different. The sales cycles are long, and there's some nuances there. So it brought a lot of valuable experience to that. And I had the background in economics and finance out of college, so I had some of the hard skills and just the conceptual things you need to apply it. But so I've been doing that for a while now with Government Capital and working with Stewart.
You're good at what you do. There's no question.
Anyway, it's an interesting business, and it's been a great opportunity to work with Coryell and your team. It's been amazing, really, the last few years.
Appreciate that. Yep. So 27 years at GovCap, is that correct?
22 years at GovCap.
Okay.
About 4 or 5 years in commercial banking.
Okay.
Yeah, prior to that, with a gap in there.
And what is your role at GovCap?
I'm a senior vice president, and we're out of our corporate office there in Southlake. And I'm involved in a lot of vendor development projects like Coryell, the program we put together with Coryell. I'm involved in developing those in different verticals within the state and local government sector. Right. So you might have roofing and technology and other facilities type related. Sometimes you have rolling stock or equipment manufacturers that are trying to figure out how do we close this gap between our solutions and the needs in the market, and funding is a big part of that equation. So I spend a lot of time doing that. Good.
Thanks for being here today.
You bet.
So Stewart, brilliant guy. I feel smarter just sitting by you guys. In fact, if we were if we were playing golf, I think I bring your averages down in IQ. So you guys are just brilliant.
Yep.
It's amazing. I enjoy working with you all the time. But you were the founder of Government Capital, you and a partner, correct?
Correct. One of two. My entrance into the industry was actually by accident.
Really?
Absolutely. When I came out of college, my first job was in commercial leasing.
Okay.
And commercial leasing had a heyday back in the 80s. That's, pre-86, you had investor tax credits. There was a lot of motivations for C Corps to do commercial leasing. And I ran into a transaction, oddly enough, in La Mesa, Texas, who is still a client today.
Okay.
And learned pretty quick from that transaction that the value delivery for a city, in this case it was a hospital district actually, was very, very different than a commercial lease incentives would be for a C or an S Corp or an LLC to engage in a commercial lease opportunity. And I went to the meeting the first time we had it and learned pretty quick that they actually knew less about it than I did. And there's a saying my grandfather used to say, which is sometime opportunity knocks and sometime it whispers. And that is a whisper that I heard, had a partner that heard the same thing. And then we launched Government Capital in November of '92.
Okay.
And pretty much delivered public finance services to middle America down. That's where we started. And at that time, leasing was brand new in Texas. In fact, we did the first financing for the University of Texas system for Midwestern State University, and those have to be approved by the Texas Bond Review Board as a matter of just process.
Okay.
And when you're at the Bond Review Board and you get a question from the governor's office designee on that board, and the question is, what is a lease purchase agreement? Mm-hmm. You're on the front.
Yeah.
And so, we've added a very talented staff, as Ed is an example of over the years, and been truly blessed to just have great customers and great team, and been running that cylinder for 33 years with a lot of fun.
That's amazing.
Really enjoy it.
33 years, that's incredible. I remember celebrating your 30th not too long ago with you right in Southlake. So, yeah, it's a privilege doing business with you guys. You are definitely a king in the industry, and you've helped so many schools. In fact, I think at one time you and I discussed it was in the billions, if I'm not mistaken. Am I off on that?
No, as far as what?
In what you've found in financing for public entities.
Yeah, $6.5 billion.
$6.5 billion. It's incredible, over a 33-year period.
Yeah, primarily in middle America.
Okay.
They're not doing the billion-dollar bond issues. In middle America, they're a lot smaller. It takes a lot of transactions, about 11,000 different financings actually.
It's incredible. And it's basically helping our public institutions and entities with connecting with financing options. That's really what Government Capital is. That's what you specialize in. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's challenges in every market. Texas has challenges. You guys actually work in more states than Texas. You're pretty diverse in your coverage area. So you have to abide by the laws in each state and how they apply to financing for public entities. Is that difficult to keep up with and navigate, Ed?
Well, it does change. Each legislative session, there are things we have to pay attention to. But municipal finance in general is a big ship, and it moves and it turns slowly. But it's very complex. What you can do, even within each state, varies. Texas, we should talk about Texas. What a school district can do is different than what a city or county could do, or what a special district could do. And a water district is different from an emergency services district. There's a couple of different things that we have to be aware of. One is the capital market requirements for a project. What's the size of the project? What state is it in? What's the geographic implications, the demographics, and also the borrowing authorities, as you mentioned, because some states allow us to do certain structures, what we call firm term. It doesn't have a non-appropriation where they can basically the borrower, the city or the school can terminate the contract with no obligation. That's called non-appropriation. So some states require that to be, and so the capital markets see that as a potential risk, and so it has to be priced differently. The terms may be different. So there are a lot of nuances if you're going to go outside of a specific category or vertical within a state even. But we've developed that expertise and knowledge. Stewart mentioned $6.5 billion. That's about 11,000 transactions. So that's 11,000 city council meetings, school board meetings, hospital district meetings, attorney review of your contracts.
Yes.
So you develop a network of experience and a network of legal counsels and bond attorneys that you've been working with. And it really allows you to, you can't develop that obviously just by reading a book. It took years and years and years of doing that. Another thing that Stewart didn't get into yet, but I'll go ahead and open the topic, is that we actually have two companies. One is Government Capital Corporation that we do most of our work out of for the non-municipal securities business. But then Government Capital Securities Corporation is our regulated entity. That's a municipal advisory firm. We were a broker-dealer for years and years and years. So that's an SEC-regulated firm where we're advising clients on actual issuance of bonds. And there's two main lanes on this highway we operate on. One is the government capital, the lease purchase agreements, the notes, the time warrants, the certificates of indebtedness, et cetera, that are forms of financing, but they're not municipal securities. They're not regulated by the SEC. I'm licensed as a municipal advisor on that other lane, but together you really have a knowledge base that has a lot of reach, because when you're going to other markets in other states, some of the principles that apply maybe on the municipal securities business, even though they may not specifically apply to a transaction, you have contacts, you have knowledge of the bond counsels that are involved in approving that transaction that you need to tap into in order to get a project done, because you need to be able to navigate, as you mentioned, those specific borrowing authorities. And so when you're going into a new market or an area that we don't have, maybe there's not a lot of financings done, maybe it's a smaller rural state or a smaller rural area, it really helps to have that broad expertise.
It's a complicated process. There's so many dynamics to it. Stewart, you saw this 33 years ago. You looked at it and said, wow, public financing, what can I do with this? Because people need help. And that's what we're all about. We're all about setting the standard. So as we look at government institution, education, K-12 schools, higher education, counties, municipalities, all the clients that you serve in the many states that you serve them in, if I'm a decision maker at one of these entities, why should I consider financing? Why does it benefit me? If they have, and I'm wanting to know this for those superintendents out there that maybe they don't even realize it's an option for them. But where's the benefit in a public entity that's tax-driven borrowing money? Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a delicate balance between bonding capacity and the ability to implement projects between that and cash reserves. And alternative financing tools, each of which are found in the state legislations within the state with which the borrower is located, represents part of the toolbox that needs to be part of their strategy as they take what they have and implement as many projects for the constituents.
Okay, that makes sense. So it bridges a gap, basically, is what it does for everybody. You were going to say something, Ed?
Well, I was just going to say there's many different things that are considered. I was at a board meeting last night and had lengthy conversations with a fast-growing suburb of Dallas that's trying to deal with a large amount of growth, and they're balancing a number of the things that Stewart mentioned, cash reserves, our ability to issue fixed debt via traditional bonds, et cetera. But really one of the things that's overlooked many times is the fact that if the alternative to financing is to delay the project until we can build up reserves to pay for it out of a fund balance, one of the hidden costs that's overlooked is the cost of inflation, and then the lost return on investment associated with that project. So take a Coryell roofing system, for example. You don't have any control over the material cost and the input costs that go into a project. You work with it and you try to mitigate any kind of sharp increases for your clients, but we're all, the tide rises. For example, inflation rates, it's down a little bit from what it was 3 or 4 years ago. We got tariffs, that are creating some turbulence, creating uncertainty. But the bottom line is it'd be without doubt, if you looked at a project that you had quoted 5 years ago or 3 years ago, and they decided not to do it, for whatever reason, and you came back and you requoted that project today, it's going to be 20, 30, 40% more expensive.
Exactly.
Sometimes the resistance to financing is, well, we don't want to pay interest. And that makes sense. That's what my granddad taught me. Don't buy that car, don't finance that first car, save up and pay cash for it. Makes sense. However, when you're looking at the ability to borrow tax-exempt rates, which means lower than what you or I could go to a bank and get a commercial loan for, 30 to 40% less, you know, a 10-year instrument of financing in the 4 to 5%, you know, area. Then when you have inflation running at 5 to 7%, you're actually going to make money by financing and not delaying the project. But that's a hidden cost because there's not a line item in your next budget meeting that has inflation. We need to really talk about our inflation line item in our budget. You don't adopt a budget line item that says inflation, but you're going to pay for it if you delay the project. And nobody's standing at the mic in their 3 minutes of fame at the board meeting complaining about how much money we're spending on inflation.
Right.
They're going to complain about other things, but not inflation. The other thing is the lost ROI. So if you have an energy savings component, for example, to a roofing system, even if it's a 25, 30, or 40-year payback, on a simple payback basis, that's like a 1 to 2% ROI, which doesn't sound like much, but you add that up over an accumulated a time of delay, and all of a sudden that project cost is really increasing. But those are two costs that are hidden. It's like the silent killer of blood pressure. Back in the 50s when blood pressure became known in the health community, that it was a real health risk, they called it the silent killer because there were no symptoms.
Right.
And you just have problems, it was too late to address it. I have used that same reference to inflation and lost ROI. Those are silent killers. You're going to pay for it when you do the project, and you're going to realize how much you're going to pay for it but when you do it. But today there's no pain.
Which is a scary proposition right now because you brought up a word, tariffs, and I don't know that we've really seen the full impact of tariffs yet. And Stewart, you're a visionary clearly, and you read the markets very well. So without getting too deep in the weeds on tariffs, is that something that is helping you guys in financing? You're seeing more opportunities in financing because of tariffs, or is it something that's caused people to back down from financing? What's the mindset? What's the market right now? And where do you think it's going?
You know what, there's a lot of things over the years that impacted the cost of the project. You know, back, I guess in 2009, it was Davis-Bacon in some instances.
Okay.
You know, it may be tariffs. But, I mean, certainly, I mean, that really doesn't affect the financing rates. I mean, the market is going to take the transaction based on what the investment criteria is at the time. And while certainly that does impact the implementation cost, I've never really seen an impact between those things and the desire for our issuers to implement critical projects.
Okay.
Have you?
No, I just think that the economics are better in terms of we either are going to pay interest or we're going to pay inflation.
Correct.
You don't get to opt out of that.
Right.
There's not a third option. Well, we just won't pay anything. We'll save our money and wait and buy it, and we won't pay any interest. Well, you're going to pay like 3 times as much inflation as what you'd have paid in interest. Yeah. So that's the implication.
Another point I'd like to add to Ed is another issue when they're determining whether to pay cash or finance it is, as Ed mentioned, they can borrow tax exempt. But if you look at the rates that are attainable in most of the investment pool programs at the public sector level, whether it's Tex Pool or Texas Class or the similar ones around the country, they don't pay tax. They get to borrow as an advantage of not having the investor pay tax on the interest income, but they get to invest at prevailing wages in the market without having a tax impact from that yield, unlike businesses would. And so many times we've seen multiple financings where the earning rate on their cash exceeds their borrowing cost for the same project.
Wow.
In fact, we've done several transactions that were set up with redemption provisions so they could implement. And then when the market changed, they had the ability to redeem it.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
so
that'll put a few extra computer stations in the classroom.
Right. Or pay more teachers. I mean, it's exciting
absolutely.
when you start thinking about how we can help public entities, especially schools. I mean, I feel like our schools need the most help. They really do. Your counties and your city governments, your state facilities or entities, even higher education, they tend to have more flexibility in funding, let's say. But your K-12 schools are the ones that have a lot of challenges. They're, for bonds passing. I get the story pretty regularly that a school is waiting on a project for a bond to pass. And I understand that, and it's exactly what you talked about, Ed. It's that mindset of don't borrow money, don't borrow money. But what you guys have done at Government Capital is you've brought the market an option that basically shows them if you will finance this project, you're actually saving money. And you're getting it done right now, and you're eliminating potential issues even further down the road. Am I correct in saying that?
No, absolutely. In fact, that can be applied across the standard.
Okay.
I mean, even in things as simplistic as bus fleets. I mean, there is an interest cost many times associated with a fleet addition. But there's a savings that's not on the budget that is the maintenance savings as opposed to having that equipment back under warranty from the manufacturer. And, sometimes it's kind of difficult to connect all the dots of where the costs really are to put into the benefit of the decision-making process related to a financing and the ability to implement sooner.
And typically, the decisions to finance, the options that a public entity would consider are governed by a board of directors. And board of directors typically is looking out for the best interest of that public entity. They want to make sure that they're being wise with their money. So how do we educate all of these public entities? How do we get to them and help them understand this? Is it, you've been doing it for 33 years, is it you're just one at a time, you're helping schools and government entities understand the benefit of financing? Is there anything in legislation that can be done to promote or benefit schools if they were to use financing more often? Have you seen anything like that?
Over the years, we have, but as Ed said, those kind of things move very slowly.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, maybe 15 years ago, we had some expansion in some of the borrowing authorities in Texas in the education code with regard to the expanded use of a couple of tools. Mm-hmm. But, that's probably the last one, and it's 15 years dated, and that was in Texas Education Code, Section 45.
Okay.
I think that legislatively, there is a posture, certainly here in Texas, you can look at other states, where it actually, they're making it a little more difficult for schools, cities and counties, et cetera, to access the capital markets. There's maybe a sense that cities or schools have become too leveraged. Here in Texas, there's a lot of conversation about property tax burden, et cetera. But I think in terms, back to your question of how do you communicate this? How do you, explain this to a broad spectrum of different school districts and different situations? And I think it's a little bit of a challenge. It's a bit of a mind share, because I think if you could sit down with those trustees on the board or those superintendents, I think that they would reach agreement that yes, that project is going to be more expensive. You are going to pay 5 to 7%, at least you could say, arguably, per year more in inflation, and you're going to pay for that. And you could have financed it at 4 to 5% and eliminated all those repair costs for the next 3 to 5 years, in all the benefits that come with the system. I think they would agree with that. In the meanwhile, as Stewart pointed out, whatever fund balance you keep on hand that you don't have to tap into is probably earning at 4%, and you're only paying 4.5 to 5 on the financing. So it's really, the economics are, well, I think there would be broad agreement. I just think there's inertia, mental inertia with regard to financing, because it seems like we're obligating ourselves to something that we're not otherwise. If we just don't do it now and don't finance it, then we're off the hook. When the reality is we're really, as administrators and as trustees of a school district, you are on the hook to maintain those facilities for those students and for that faculty. It is an obligation. And as the question is what is the most efficient way to, if we're going to be obligated, and you are, whether you finance, because you're going to either continue repairing an old roof, you're going to have poor facility conditions, not as attractive in learning environment for your kids, and you're going to have to address that, and or you can approach it with a new system, a solution that's going to bring you up to speed, up to spec. That's going to be something that you're going to be proud of, your students and your faculty are going to be proud of. And it kind of sets a tone within the district as terms of what your goals are, and if you can do it in a way that economically makes sense. And I think that the financing right now, certainly in these conditions where we have cash yields that are up, you have financing costs that are still low for school districts, and we have the ability, because sometimes the pushback is, and I think you mentioned it, Chris, is well, we're waiting on a bond issue.
Exactly.
So we have structures that will allow you to go ahead and get this project done, and then you can roll that into a future bond issue. You kind of get the best of both worlds.
There's so many tools in your bag, so many, and wow, the way you guys present that is just powerful. It makes you question, why would anybody not want to pursue this? And I think that's what we have to scream from the mountaintops is, look, I can't tell you how many conversations we get in as a roofing contractor with public entities and schools, and when they say, well, we're just going to repair it, we're going to patch it, we're going to kick it a little further down the road. You're letting water in your building. I'm saying the students are the most important thing, the staff is the most important thing, and you let water in the building, you're creating health risks. Why would you do that? You talk about being responsible, let's just call it out. Why would you not be responsible and look at options to start your project right now? And those options are financing. And it's cheaper to finance than what we're paying in inflation. And not to mention the fact, and we've only got a few minutes left, but I want to tell you about a conversation I had with Kevin Brown, the executive director of TASA. And I also had a conversation with executive directors from all of the regions across the state of Texas. And Kevin Brown told me that there are close to 80 new first year superintendents in the state of Texas right now. They need to understand these financing options are for their benefit, and it can help them. They can literally leave a legacy because of the things that they've done using financing. And then the executive directors told me in Austin, I opened the floor up and I said, tell me what you guys are dealing with. Tell me what the challenges are right now. What's the industry like? And they flat out said in 3 to 4 months, this public education is going to take on a completely different shape, and it's very concerning. And a lot of it has to do with legislation and vouchers and things like that. And that's a controversial subject. We could probably dig into that on another episode if you guys want to. I'd love to do that with you. I like to get a little controversial, but the voucher system is presenting concerns because how much it's going to affect the funding of schools, right. And they're going to have to lean on financing a little bit more. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it may, if you have less top line revenue coming in, then you're going to have to reallocate or reprioritize your use of the limited funds that you have available that's just in your budget. Now you've got to figure out a way, how do we address these, in this case, critical facility needs with a little bit less money.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit less on top of rising costs, so it's actually a pretty good chunk from a school district's perspective, public school district. But I think it just comes down to saying, you know what, because of the ability we have as a tax-exempt entity to borrow at tax-exempt rates, to still earn on our fund balance a really solid yield, and the fact that we're not being exposed to the cost of delaying it, and understanding that, explaining that to your trustees, explaining that to your constituents within the district, then financing is not a bad thing. Financing is your friend. And yes, we are in the financing world. We're in the financing arena. But I can say it's just math. It really is. It just comes out. If you just put a pencil to it, you're actually much, much farther ahead to move forward now. Get that project done. The kids are getting ready to be out. If you didn't already have a project lined up this summer, maybe there's still time. I don't know. But sooner is always better if you have a project that you're going to have to do anyway. You know you're going to do it. You know, we're going to do it in the next 2 or 3. We have to do it within 3 years. So why are you going to keep spending money on repairing the old roof? You're going to have a poor facility environment for your students. Financing is key to that, and the fact that your dollars are dropping down on your top line revenue even makes financing more relevant. That's not, whatever happens on your top line revenue, you still have to figure out a way to get your roof taken care of. Because your facility starts with a roof. It doesn't start from the ground up, it actually starts from the roof down.
That's right.
So, and I bet just because you can't use a building if the roof is not functioning.
You're exactly right.
You can use it if there's a crack in the foundation.
Well, I appreciate the relationship and the partnership that we have with government capital. I appreciate the fact that we, Coryell Roofing, and trying to set standards in this industry, have a very valuable resource to take to public entities and to decision makers. And Stewart, just one final thought. If I'm a new superintendent, what's your message to me?
Really get familiar with all the tools in your toolbox. I mean, you're in the roof business. Think of all the tools you take to a job, and each one is designed for a specific purpose and performs that purpose better than an alternative you may have in the toolbox. Financing is really not that different. It's not. I mean, historically, financing was generally looked at, we have a capital project, in which case a bond is a solution. Equipment financing, a lease is a solution. And from the history, when you thought of equipment financing, you thought of copiers and furniture, fixtures and equipment and computers. Over the years, through legislation changes and expansion of the use of those tools that were originally for equipment financing, they've expanded to renovation projects, to roof projects. We've done VOTEC buildings and field houses and tracks and AstroTurf. Keep up with the expansions of those other tools, because they certainly have across the country, as legislations have expanded the use of those tools, as we did in Texas, but it's also occurred across the country.
That's a great message and such a powerful one. So to everybody watching, Coryell Roofing, Setting the Standard, thank you for joining us. Stewart and Ed, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being here, answering questions. We should do this again sometime. We'll get a little deeper in the weeds. Would that be fun?
You bet.
Yeah, and
Thank you, Chris.
we always enjoy working with government capital, and Coryell Roofing is very proud to be able to partner with government capital to offer financing needs to public entities in our coverage area. So count on government capital. Coryell Roofing will bring them to you. Thank you.